Craig Hassel, my guess is he's probably still out on the floor getting his booth set up so they can open it a little bit. But
something somewhere.
yeah, he's doing something, so we can say anything we want to say about this. But this is some artwork that Craig developed for our first show. And I'm Paul McKinney, by the way, one of the original organizers, and the rest of the guys on the panel. Greg, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Greg Riddle. I'm one of the original organizers.
Chris Munson, one of the original organizers.
Yeah.
I'm Shannon Smith. I'm also one of the original organizers of the show.
Bob Herbison, also an original.
And Eric DeBrecht, an original.
So I kind of put together the story of how we got kicked off, and it's in the program if you want to look at it. But just real quickly, I mean, all of us were together at Super Auctions one day, and we were, buying machines and kind of fretting over the fact that we might have to spend $200 or $300 for a machine, and someone in the back would be shill bidding us up, and the hardest part of those shows was figuring out how to get all the machines home. But we sat and lamented the fact that hey, you couldn't find a machine out there in the wild anywhere. And a couple from Oklahoma had come down the year before and did a pinball show, and they weren't going to do it anymore. And we got talking and said, man, we got to do something to save pinball. It's down to just Stern. What are we going to do? And so this show really started with a group of guys that wanted just to save pinball. And if you look on the floor, we did. And these are the guys that started it.
Absolutely.
But Craig Hassel, he was kind of our graphics guy, and he put together this just like state-of-the-art, awesome piece of artwork that we posted out there, just praying to God some people would show up and get in a hotel, and it did. So I don't know how to go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Technical guys.
Slide 105.
Yeah, that's
Richard,
probably it right there.
does it go to the next slide? Do I press something?
There you go. There you go.
Got it. Clap on, clap off. All right. Well, I'm
Oh
gonna.
man, that's me and Greg.
That is. That's you and Greg.
Wow,
Man.
I had dark
so
hair.
I wanted both of them to tell a little bit about the story and how they got into all of this. And so we'll start with Chris.
All right. Thanks for being here. So in this particular show, I was given a seminar on how to repaint cabinets. This is well before the days of stencils. And, we were invited to go ahead and, talk a little bit about how to do something. And I came up with this because back at that time, I was really interested in, doing full-scale restorations. One of the games that I did was an 8-ball deluxe. Before stencils, I taped it completely off and used an airbrush. Took 120 hours to paint. Everybody now, it's really easy for them to do because you go buy a set of stencils and get some paint and do it. So these were the days before a lot of reproduction parts. And like Paul said, this was all new to us. We didn't know where to find games. We didn't have the internet really. We had rec.games.pinball. And my personal involvement started when I literally, 1999, I had a house that I was building and it had, in the plans, it had a game room. And I went, oh, game room. Wonder whatever happened to all those pinball machines and video games. So I started looking around, and long story short, Craig Hassel and I met online. We were both after the same game down in San Antonio. We found a black hole pinball for $100. It was kind of a contest to see who was going to get there first. I happened to get there first. So anyway, I have Craig to thank for kind of getting me involved. And then, everybody else kind of came together and gelled, and it just, it was wonderful. It really worked out for all of us. And it's hard to imagine it's been 20 years. I mean, it's crazy, but.
And the strange thing is, I met Craig the same way at 5 o'clock in the morning at a house that had a Twin Winds and a Magic. And I waited all weekend to get there, and I got to the front porch before he did. And my first impression of Craig was me walking out of the garage with those two pinball machines and him standing in the road with a frown on his face. And that's how we met. So.
Yeah, so I'm Greg Riddle. So one of the things that I think is kind of interesting when I go back and think about this is I originally had gotten a subscription to Game Room magazine, and they used to have an advertisement for something called Pinball Expo. So really before the internet, it was just a one-page sheet, And I convinced my wife that it was smart for me to basically to fly to Chicago and go to something called Pinball Expo. And so when I got there, I realized it was something I'd never even understood before, which is they had all the pinball designers, artists, they had autograph sessions, had tour of the Bally Williams factory at the time, and then seminars. And so I remember meeting a lot of these guys at the pinball auctions over in Mesquite at Big Town Center, I think is where it was. And so I was telling them, I said, hey, if we're going to have a show, we really should have seminars. So that's kind of how this came about, and Chris and I did our first seminar, and then they were able to also get Steve Ritchie to come in. And if you see this one right here, that's me on the right, we're a little bit younger, but that's from the Godzilla pinball machine, and I got really interested in the pinball manufacturing process. And what I'd do is I'd buy stuff on eBay, and then I would always ask somebody, hey, do you have anything else interesting? And a lot of these guys worked at Bally, worked at Williams, worked at Stern, and I had somebody that worked at Stern, it was basically Data East at the time, and he would just send me stuff in the mail. He'd just it'd be kind of like, I worked for Texas Instruments, it'd be like somebody saying, hey, can you send me all the paperwork around your office? And the fact that somebody was interested in this, and this guy thought I was just crazy, but he would just take stuff around the office and go put it in a box and ship it to me. And what this was interesting is this was the Godzilla head, and I wish I still had it, but the artist Dave Link, he actually put an Easter egg in it. So in all the grooves of Godzilla's face was L-I-N-K is his last name. So I was just fascinated with all of this miscellaneous junk, but I thought it was pretty cool. But I really appreciate that, Paul and the other guys listened to some of the ideas that I had about Pinball Expo, because, now we've got, these superstars of all the pinball community that come down and autograph sessions and all those things. So pretty cool.
Kind of rock stars now.
Yeah, rock stars.
Oh, wait. Pick Eric.
Hey.
Pick Eric. Or we get next slide.
Yeah, next slide.
I got it.
Richard.
I got it.
Oh, yeah, man.
That's the one he was asking about.
Yeah. There's another one that says tournaments, okay? And it's just, this is funny to us, okay? Because, we thought we were pretty classy with a lot of our advertising things when we started out. And that banner, it became odorous about year 5, kind of that plastic decomposition kind of smell. And those two signs, I think they lasted with us for the first 10 years, and we finally decided, okay, we can't cheap out. We got to get a new sign. So I hope you enjoy the new sign that's up above Frisco 6. I probably put 200 hours into that. So kind of hopefully it ties it together with Elton John. So anyway. All right, next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's Time Machine. I put this up there. This is the very first raffle game, okay? Man, Greg is not in here to razz on this thing. I wish he was, because he had a time machine. Only game I owned at the time was a time machine, and we found this thing for $100, all right? And so they're like, Paul, you got a time machine, you got to fix this thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll get into it. And I had a little double the experience, but the power supply in it had a hole that was at least the size of a $50 through it, okay? All the traces were burned. There was no rotten dog, no nothing, nowhere you could go get one. I looked around for a while. So I ended up rebuilding it, and it's got like wires in the air and everything, but it worked, all right? So I'm so proud of fixing the board. And I get to the show, and I'm huffing the machine in, and I set it down, and Craig walks up, and he looks at it, and he goes, that speaker panel looks like shit. That's Craig. So anyway, so he sent me back home with a can of chrome paint to repaint it. So we got that thing up, and the cool thing is, I think it was Mark Oradat that won it, and he was real impressed. He really liked it. So we've upgraded a little this year with a brand new Elton John machine that you can have as a raffle prize. So be sure to enjoy that. Bob, you did a lot of our work on just working with the media and things like that, and still participate in the show every single year, bring some outstanding EM games, and as soon as I get it out of the back room, there'll be I think maybe the only one in the world, a Williams Dallas game. Wow. And it has got a very interesting set of rules. So, Bob, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think I'm probably the senior member up here, probably by a long shot, because I'm really old. I've been a pinball enthusiast since I was a kid. And so I moved to Dallas in 1984 from Missouri. And my pinball collecting really kicked into high gear once I got down here. And I had actually attended a lot of shows prior to us getting one started here in Dallas. So I had had a lot of experience attending shows. I went to the first Pinball Expo and I went to the first 15. I went to shows at the Pinfest in Allentown. Herb Silvers had a few shows, some in LA, one in Vegas. There was a really good show in Phoenix back in those days. And so I had a lot of experience as an attendee, and I was so excited about being able to have a show here in Dallas. And so 3 or 4 months ago, I got this call that, hey, if I bring you this Williams Dallas pinball from 1949, which is a year after I was born, can you get it up and going for the show? And I said, sure, I'll give it my best shot. And so Paul dropped it off, and the game really cleaned up nicely. And it does have a really interesting set of rules for a 1949 game. You should probably check it out when you're wandering around the floor this weekend. It is a cool game, and it really is an interesting game.
Where's that located?
Yeah, it's going to be just to the right of the entrance in Frisco 6. I'll get it out there as soon as I can. But,
It's not out there yet.
But one of the weird features of it is the lights at the top when you shoot the ball and you have to hit. It bounces through the different score mechanisms at the top depending on which ball you run. And for a 1949 electromechanical.
Yeah, yep.
Cool.
Eric, you got anything that you can remember that where we weren't burning something down and knocking the power out?
Eric used to be a great guy to go and buy pinballs from for cheap.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've been a commercial operator for 40 years, so I've had machines on location, and I've been in Arlington, Grand Prairie area that whole time. So I actually had a physical shop that we would do repair for home customers. And again, back then there really wasn't the internet, so there was no one that really stocked pinball parts. Most of the big arcade places had quit using pinballs because they weren't profitable items. So we stocked balls and cleaner, Novus and mill wax, and had legs and bolts and light bulbs. And so I think the only person in the area that would do home service calls. Pinball back then, it's not like it is today. It wasn't such a big thing like it is now. There was really no manufacturers at that time. Williams was the last pinball manufacturer, and they quit making machines in 2000. And Stern hadn't quite come back around yet, I don't think, or Williams closed, and then it was a few years before Stern hired Pat Lawler, and they made their first game, which was Monopoly, I believe. So anyway, I had a shop, so when we did the first year of pinball show, we kind of wanted somebody there to have parts and supplies, and I had my toolbox there, and pretty much the whole show, everybody's like, hey, do you have a fuse? Do you have a coil? Can I borrow your tools? And I had all my dollies and my tools, and it was, we were all not expecting what happened, and the machines even then got played, 3 days straight, where most of these machines had been in either people's homes or maybe got resurrected right before the show, so none of them had been played that much in probably years. So we kind of had a thing where we'd walk around the show floor because you could smell either a machine burning up or a coil going bad. We kind of had this game, like, try to guess which machine it is so we could figure it out and turn it off. But we tried to keep them all running, and that was kind of my original entry into it, was having parts there for people, and we had magazines and books. I said it was real early on, and there was almost no information. The internet wasn't really, like it is today. So we were learning ourselves as well as trying to help most of the customers to decide what they wanted, if they wanted to buy something or where to go and how to keep them running.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up because the show opens in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I just had
But-
one thing.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to just say, in case you guys don't realize that these guys up here, and especially Paul, who stayed with the show, we all owe him a lot of thanks because, when at the time that we started the show, we were talking about that a lot of our kids and friends didn't even know what pinball was because there weren't pinballs on location. And if you look like in the brochure, there was like 81 something machines that first show. Those were our personal machines that we loaded up. I remember I rented a U-Haul truck, brought my collection, essentially my entire collection at the time, to the show.
We all said, you bring 10, I'll bring 10, you bring 10, and we'll have a pinball show, and that's pretty much how we started the first show.
So yeah, and Paul's mentioned this before, and I think I really agree with it because this comment that this show has really helped save pinball because prior to this show, like you went to Pinball Expo back in the late 90s, it was that pinball was for operators, pinball was for bars and location, and what this show has done is really had the everyday person and said, you can have these things in your home. And I love going around the show and seeing that it's such an inclusive environment that you have some people that they maybe make special aprons or do powder coating or somebody makes patches, but there's always, this is a lot of people's life these days.
Yeah.
So
So thank you for coming, and thank you for supporting the show. We really appreciate it.
Questions?
Any questions? 2002.
Yeah.
Was anyone at the show in 2002? In the room? And I noticed Jeff Ball walked in a little bit late. He's supposed to be up here on the stage
Jeff-
with us. He's one of the other organizers.
Jeff's one of our original organizers as well.
Arlington.
No, that was,
Arlington.
yeah.
No,
Arlington, yeah.
It was in Arlington.
It was on 360 in Arlington.
360
yeah.
and Brown.
Yeah. So, yeah, those were in the days of power problems. We found out that a lot of these hotels couldn't handle, what we had to do. It was funny.
It scared
That
them a
year,
little.
the first year that we did it in the fall. And when we were unloading the trailers, it was like about 130 degrees inside those trailers. And we said, we're never doing this in the summertime ever again.
One thing you'll see over the weekend is, and I'm walking around with some of these in my pocket, is you'll see a little silver 2002 pop bumper. Those are for the people that I know are at the first show, okay? So you'll see that on about 100 people's badges that when I can find them around. And it's always great to get phone calls. This is a moto, so there must be something wrong with their booth. So I'll go do work now. But since you guys are in this room and the show opens in a few minutes and all of you got your wristbands right now, don't tell anyone. We're gonna go through the secret entrance on the side so you don't have to go get in that line over there. And I'm not gonna step off the edge.
It's already quite crowded in there.
I know, but this is the
All right.